Millionaire finds abandoned babies on his farm, notices a black beggar girl approaching. John Miller, a millionaire farmer? That's what folks called him after years of hard work on his Iowa corn farm. But now, he felt anything but. Since Mary passed, the place felt like a tomb, empty. Then this morning, driving his pickup, checking the South 40, he saw something weird. Real weird. A pile of corn stalks, flattened, and inside, 3 babies. 3 tiny, screaming babies, all bundled up in a makeshift crib made of old feed sacks. Abandoned. His heart hammered. What in God's name? He hadn't held a baby since his grandkids were little. He didn't even know what to do. But then he saw her, at the edge of the woods like a scared deer. A young woman, black, looked barely more than a kid herself, dressed in rags. A beggar girl? She stared at the babies, her eyes wide with something. Desperation? Fear? She took a step, then another. Hesitated, like she wanted to run, but couldn't. John felt a jolt, a feeling he hadn't felt since Mary got sick. Protectiveness. He had to help. Before he could say a word, sirens. A county sheriff's car, topping the hill, lights flashing. The woman flinched, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Then she was gone, vanished back into the woods, quick as a shadow. John's gut twisted. What was she running from? He glanced back at the babies, still screaming their little lungs out. This was a mess, a huge mess, and something told him this was just the beginning. What would Sheriff Brody think? And why did John feel this overwhelming urge to protect? The babies and the mysterious woman more than he'd felt anything since Mary's passing. Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo, para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários de qual cidade você está assistindo. Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. John's gut twisted. What was she running from? He glanced back at the babies, still screaming their little lungs out. This was a mess, a huge mess. And something told him this was just the beginning. What would Sheriff Brody think? And why did John feel this overwhelming urge to protect the babies and the mysterious woman, more than he'd felt anything since Mary's passing? "Hold your horses," John yelled, waving his arms at the sheriff's car. Brody, a man built like a brick, hopped out, squinting in the morning sun. "John, what in tarnation is going on here?" John pointed to the makeshift crib. "Babies, Brody. Someone left them. 3 of them." Brody's face went from stern to something like shock. He lumbered over, peering down at the wailing infants. "Well, I'll be." He radioed it in, voice tight. Ambulance arrived, sirens wailing. The paramedics swaddled the babies, checking them over. John watched, feeling helpless. What could he do? Then it happened. One of the paramedics, a young woman with a kind face, looked up, her face pale. "Sheriff, Mr. Miller, there's something you need to see." Brody and John exchanged uneasy glances. They walked over. The paramedic gently pulled back the blanket on one of the babies. A gasp escaped John's lips. It felt like someone had punched him in the gut. Brody swore under his breath. What in God's name? There, nestled amongst the blankets, each baby bore a small, meticulously tattooed mark. A symbol John knew. A symbol he hadn't seen in years. A symbol that belonged to the Crow Creek Mob. The Crow Creek Mob? In Iowa? They were supposed to be history, busted up years ago, but that tattoo, it was unmistakable. It was their brand. John felt a cold dread creep into his bones. These weren't just abandoned babies. These were connected. Connected to something dark, something dangerous. And then it hit him. The woman in the woods. The beggar girl. She wasn't running from something. She was running to something. Protection? Revenge? Brody was already barking orders into his radio. Get me everything. We got on the Crow Creek Mob. Every last file. John's mind raced. This was bigger than he could have ever imagined. And somehow, he was right in the middle of it. Suddenly, he remembered something Mary used to say. Trouble always comes knocking when you least expect it, John. Just gotta be ready to answer the door. But this wasn't just trouble. This was a damn hurricane. He looked at the babies, their tiny faces red and wrinkled, innocent, and yet marked. Just then, Brody turned to him, his face grim. John, he said, his voice low. There's something else. We ran the DNA on these kids, and, well, you're not going to believe this. He paused, swallowing hard. One of them is yours, John. According to the test, you're the father. John, he said, his voice low, there's something else. We ran the DNA on these kids, and, well, you're not going to believe this. He paused, swallowing hard. One of them is yours, John. According to the test, you're the father. The world tilted. One of his? He felt like he'd been hit by a runaway combine. Mine? That's impossible. He hadn't. Not since Mary. It just couldn't be. Brody just looked at him, his face a mask of disbelief. I know, John, but the science doesn't lie. The lab is triple-checking it, but... John stared at the babies, their tiny faces now seeming to mock him. A father? At his age? To a baby? Involved with the Crow Creek Mob? Then, a thought hit him, cold and sharp. The woman in the woods. The beggar girl. Was she a mother? Did she know? Was that why she ran? Brody, he rasped. Find her. Find that woman. She knows something. But Brody wasn't listening. He was staring at something over John's shoulder. His eyes were wide, his face pale. He was looking at the woods. John, Brody whispered, look. John turned, and then he saw her, standing at the edge of the woods, just like before. The woman, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, a group of men emerged from the trees. Big men, mean-looking men, all wearing leather jackets with a familiar symbol on the back. The Crow Creek Mob. And then the woman stepped forward. She looked at John, her eyes filled with pity, and then she smiled. Hello, Daddy, she said. John's world exploded. Daddy? She was his daughter? A daughter he never knew? A daughter involved with the Crow Creek Mob? It couldn't be, could it? But then he looked at her face, really looked at it, and he saw it. A flash of Mary's eyes, the set of her jaw. His head spun. How? When, suddenly, the men behind her started moving forward, guns drawn. "Give us the babies, John," one of them yelled, "or she gets it." John looked at the woman, his daughter, at the babies, at Brody, fumbling for his gun. This wasn't just a mess. This was a war. And then, everything went black. And then, everything went black. John blinked, disoriented. He was on the ground. The air smelled like corn and blood. He coughed, trying to sit up. Brody was next to him, groaning, clutching his arm. John, they got the babies. John's heart seized. The babies. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his head. The woman, his daughter, was gone. So were the men, and the ambulance. Just tire tracks in the dirt, and the lingering scent of diesel. He looked at Brody. "We gotta go after them." Brody shook his head, his face pale. "John, I called it in. State troopers are on their way. We can't." "The hell we can't," John roared. He was already running towards his pickup. He knew these roads. He knew these woods. He wasn't about to let them get away with his grandbabies, and his daughter. God, his daughter. He jumped in the truck, started the engine. Brody was yelling something, but John didn't hear him. He slammed the truck into gear and roared down the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust. He drove like a man possessed, past the cornfields, past the old oak tree where he and Mary used to picnic. Every mile brought him closer, he hoped, to the babies and to her. Then he saw it. Up ahead, a beat-up sedan, pulled over on the side of the road. Smoke pouring from the engine. It was them. He slammed on the brakes, grabbed his shotgun from the rack, and jumped out. He didn't even think. He just acted. He approached the car cautiously, gun raised. He could hear voices inside, arguing. "I told you the damn thing was gonna overheat." "Shut up, Earl. It's not my fault." John kicked the door open. "All right, you lowlifes, get out, now." Two men stumbled out, hands raised. They were the same guys from the farm, the ones with the leather jackets, scowling, scared. "Where are they?" "Babies," John demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "Where's my daughter?" They didn't answer, just stared at him, their eyes darting around. Suddenly, a voice from inside the car, weak, frightened. "Dad, help me." John's blood ran cold. He pushed past the men and looked inside, and that's when he saw her, his daughter. She was slumped in the back seat, covered in blood. But it wasn't her blood. In her arms, nestled close, were the babies, all three of them, safe. But beside her, on the seat, was another baby, a fourth baby, much smaller than the others, still silent. And that's when John saw the tattoo. Not on the baby, but on his daughter's arm. A different symbol. A symbol he hadn't seen in even longer. A symbol of the FBI. His daughter was an agent? Then, a voice behind him, smooth, deadly. "That's far enough, Mr. Miller." John turned, and standing there holding a gun was Sheriff Brody. But it wasn't Brody's face. It was different, harder, colder. "It's been a long time, John," the fake Brody said. "We were hoping you'd just fade away after." Mary passed. He pointed the gun at John's daughter. "But now you're a problem, and problems need to be eliminated." John stared at him, his mind reeling. Brody? A fake? An imposter? But then, Mary. "What did you do to Mary?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. The imposter smiled, a cruel, heartless smile. "Let's just say she knew too much. Let's just say she knew too much." John's shotgun clattered to the ground. He couldn't breathe. "Mary? They killed Mary?" The air turned thick, heavy. This wasn't just about babies, or the mob, or some daughter he never knew. This was about Mary, his Mary. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. It surged through him, blinding him. He lunged at the fake Brody, a roaring animal. Brody fired. The bullet ripped through John's shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded, but he didn't stop. He tackled Brody, sending them both crashing to the ground. They wrestled, a desperate, brutal struggle. Brody was stronger, younger. But John had something he didn't. Vengeance. He landed a lucky punch, connecting with Brody's jaw. The imposter grunted, his grip loosening. John scrambled for the gun, his fingers closing around the cold steel. Just then, a screech of tires. Headlights blinding. A black SUV roared onto the scene, skidding to a halt. Doors flew open. More men in leather jackets, guns drawn. But these weren't Crow Creek guys. They moved with a precision, a cold efficiency that John recognized. Military. "FBI, freeze!" Chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouts. John, dazed and bleeding, watched as the newcomers engaged the Crow Creek thugs in a furious firefight. His daughter, the agent, she stirred in the back seat. "Dad, get out of here. It's not safe." He ignored her. He had to protect her. Protect the babies. He grabbed the shotgun, his shoulder screaming, and stumbled towards the SUV. Then a voice cut through the noise, clear and sharp. "John, get down!" He turned and saw her, standing beside the SUV, a gun in her hand, her face a mask of fury. Mary. His Mary. Alive. He stared, his mind shattering. Impossible. She was gone. He'd seen her. He'd held her. But there she was. Older, tougher, but undeniably Mary. "What? Huh?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "No." "Time to explain," she yelled, firing a shot that sent one of the Crow Creek guys sprawling. "Just trust me." He wanted to run to her, to hold her, to ask a million questions. But there was no time. The firefight raged on. He looked at his daughter, the agent, who was staring at Mary with an expression of utter shock. At the babies, still miraculously unharmed. At the chaos swirling around him. Nothing made sense. His wife was alive. His daughter was an agent. Everyone was shooting at everyone else. Suddenly, Mary grabbed his arm, pulling him towards her. "We have to go, now." He didn't hesitate. He followed her, blindly trusting. He had to, because in that moment, looking into her eyes, he knew one thing for sure. He didn't know the first damn thing about his life. Then, Mary looked at him, tears in her eyes. "John, there's something I need to tell you." She paused, her voice trembling. "I'm not who you think I am. My real name is..." And then, just before she could reveal her true identity, a sniper round whizzed past, narrowly missing her head. She didn't finish the sentence, but the look on her face told him everything he needed to know. He was in way over his head, and nothing would ever be the same again. Then Mary looked at him, tears in her eyes. "John, there's something I need to tell you." She paused, her voice trembling. "I'm not who you think I am. My real name is—" And then, just before she could reveal her true identity, a sniper round whizzed past, narrowly missing her head. She didn't finish the sentence, but the look on her face told him everything he needed to know. He was in way over his head, and nothing would ever be the same again. She grabbed his hand hard. "Get in the SUV, now! There's no time!" He didn't argue. He just did it. She jumped in after him, slammed the door, and the driver, another one of those steely-eyed FBI types, peeled out, leaving the chaos behind. John glanced back. More agents were arriving. The Crow Creek guys were scattering, and that fake Brody was lying on the ground. Still. Dead? He didn't know. Didn't care. "Mary, what the hell is going on?" he managed to choke out. She didn't answer right away, just stared straight ahead, her knuckles white on the gun in her lap. Finally, she sighed. "It's complicated, John. More complicated than you can imagine." "Complicated? Mary, I thought you were dead, and now you're here shooting at people. Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it." She turned to him, her eyes pleading. I know. I'll explain everything, I promise. But first, we need to get out of. You're not the only ones after those babies. Who else would want them?" She hesitated. "Someone with even more power. Someone who thought the Crow Creek mob was just a pawn in their game." The SUV sped down the highway, heading away from the farm, away from the nightmare he'd stumbled into. John looked at Mary, really looked at her. She was different, harder, more like a soldier than the woman he remembered. "Who are you, Mary?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened. "Them," her gaze steady. "My name is Evelyn Reed, and I work for a very secret part of the U.S. government. I've been undercover for years." Evelyn Reed? Undercover? His whole life, everything he thought he knew, was a lie. Then a jolt. The SUV swerved violently. A tire blew. The driver wrestled with the wheel, trying to regain control, but it was no use. The SUV careened off the road, smashing through a fence and coming to a screeching halt in a muddy field. "What the hell was that?" John yelled. "We've been hit! Get out! Get out now!" Evelyn shouted. They scrambled out of the wrecked SUV, guns drawn. John felt useless. He hadn't held a gun in years. He was just a farmer, damn it. Suddenly, a sound, a low whirring sound, growing louder. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Oh shit, that's them." John looked up, and then he saw it. A drone, small, black, and menacing, hovering just above the trees. It had to be equipped with cameras, maybe even weapons. "Get down!" Evelyn screamed, but it was too late. The drone opened fire. A hail of bullets ripped through the air, tearing up the ground around them. They dove for cover behind the wrecked SUV, praying they wouldn't get hit. Then, the drone stopped firing. The whirring sound faded, and a voice, cold and mechanical, boomed from the drone's speakers. "John Miller, we know who you are. We know about Mary. We know about the babies. Surrender now, and we promise you a quick death." John stared at the drone, his heart pounding in his chest. A quick death? They thought he was scared? They had no idea who they were dealing with. He stood up, ignoring Evelyn's frantic protests. He walked out into the open field, facing the drone, his hands empty. "Who are you?" he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. "What do you want?" The drone remained silent for a moment. Then the mechanical voice spoke again. "We want what is rightfully ours. We want the children, and we know that you are their real father, John. All 4 of them. You see, Mary wasn't barren after all. She was a surrogate mother. The world swam. All 4? Mary? A surrogate?" Then the voice continued. "Come alone, and the woman lives. Fail to comply, and she suffers the same fate as your beloved Mary. Remember, Evelyn doesn't know who her parents are, John, and she'd be devastated to find out that she was raised as a test tube baby of the elite." John stared at the drone, then at Evelyn, then back at the drone again. This wasn't just a war. It was a goddamn nightmare, and he was trapped right in the middle of it. John stared at the drone, then at Evelyn, then back at the drone again. This wasn't just a war. It was a goddamn nightmare, and he was trapped right in the middle of it. Evelyn grabbed his arm, her face pale. "John, don't listen to them. It's a trick." But John wasn't so sure. Mary? Barren? It didn't make sense. But then almost nothing did anymore. "I need to think," he said, pulling away from her. "I need to—" Suddenly, the ground trembled. A low rumble shook the air. John looked around, confused. What was that? Then he saw it, in the distance. A column of black smoke rising from the direction of his farm. His farm! His heart lurched. Everything he had, everything Mary had built with him, was back there. And those bastards! "They're attacking my farm," he said, his voice flat. Evelyn stared at the smoke, her eyes wide with horror. "They're not just after the babies, John. They want to destroy everything you hold dear." Rage, a cold, burning rage, filled him. He wasn't going to let them. He wasn't going to let them touch Mary's memory. "We're going back," he said, turning towards the wrecked SUV. "John, no, it's a trap. They'll be waiting for us." "Then we'll surprise them," he growled. He started towards the SUV, Evelyn trailing behind him, arguing, but he wasn't listening. He had a farm to protect. He had a wife to avenge, and he had 4 babies who needed him, whether he was their father or not. He reached the SUV and started rummaging through the glove compartment, searching for anything he could use as a weapon. A tire iron? A wrench? Anything. Then his fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. He pulled it out. A photograph. He stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. It was an old photo, faded and cracked. A photo of him, but not the him he knew. This him was younger, thinner, with a wild look in his eyes. And he was wearing a uniform, a military uniform. A Soviet military uniform. Underneath the photo, a handwritten note. "Agent Kolov, your mission begins." The world tilted. Soviet? Agent? Kolov? That couldn't be right. That couldn't be him. He was just a farmer from Iowa. But then fragmented memories flashed through his mind. Images of training, of languages he didn't know he knew, of missions, of... He stumbled back, clutching the photo to his chest. Who was he? What was he? Evelyn saw his face and rushed to his side. John, what's wrong? What is it? He looked at her, his eyes filled with confusion and fear. I don't know who I am, he whispered. Then a figure stepped out from behind the wrecked SUV. A woman, tall, elegant, with a cold smile. "Hello, Kolov," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "It's been a long time." John stared at her, his mind racing. He knew her. He knew that face. But from where? Then it hit him. The drone, the mechanical voice, the words. "Evelyn doesn't know who her parents are, John." He looked at the woman again, really looked at her, and he saw it. A resemblance. A subtle, almost imperceptible resemblance. You're her mother," he stammered. The woman smiled, a cruel, triumphant smile. "That's right, Kolov. I am, and it's time you remembered who you are." She raised her hand, and then the ground opened up. A gaping hole appeared in the earth, swallowing the wrecked SUV and everything around it. John, Evelyn, the woman, all of them plunged into the darkness. The last thing John saw, before he blacked out, was Evelyn's face, her eyes filled with betrayal and horror. And then, darkness. Utter and complete darkness. And a single thought echoing in his mind. He wasn't just a pawn in their game. He was the goddamn chessboard. He wasn't just a pawn in their game. He was the goddamn chessboard. Then, nothing. Just black. Cold. Air thick and heavy, like wet cement. He woke up slow, head throbbing. Taste of dirt and something else, metallic, blood. He tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his shoulder. He groaned, his vision swimming. Where? He looked around. Stone walls. Damp, musty smell, like a tomb, and torches, flickering, casting long, dancing shadows. He was in some kind of underground chamber. Evelyn. He had to find Evelyn. He struggled to his feet, swaying. "Evelyn?" he croaked, his voice hoarse. Silence, then a cough. He turned. There she was, lying on the ground a few feet away, unconscious. He rushed to her side, kneeling. He checked her pulse, faint, but there. He shook her gently. "Evelyn, wake up!" Her eyes fluttered open. She gasped, her face pale. "John, what?" "We're underground. I don't know where, but we gotta get out of here." He helped her sit up. She leaned against the wall, her breathing ragged. Who was that woman?" she whispered. He hesitated. She said she was your mother." Evelyn's eyes widened. "My mother? But that's impossible. I thought—" "No, everything we thought we knew is a lie. But right now, we gotta focus on getting out of here." He stood up, scanning the chamber. There had to be a way out. Then he saw it, on the far wall. A door, heavy, iron-bound, and beside it, a keypad. "There," he said, pointing. "Let's go." They stumbled towards the door. John examined the keypad. No numbers, just symbols. Strange, unfamiliar symbols. "Do you recognize any of these?" he asked Evelyn. She shook her head. "No, they don't look like anything I've ever seen." He ran his hand over the symbols, trying to feel something, anything. He closed his eyes, concentrating. Then, a flash, a memory, a training exercise, a voice speaking Russian. The symbols, they were Cyrillic letters. He knew this code. He started pressing the symbols one by one. A click, then another, and then a loud grinding noise. The door began to swing open, revealing a dark passageway. "Let's go," he said, grabbing Evelyn's arm. They stepped into the passage. It was narrow and winding, the air even colder and damper than before. The torches cast eerie shadows that danced on the walls. They walked for what seemed like hours, deeper and deeper into the earth. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. Then a sound, a faint humming noise, growing louder. "What's that?" Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't know, but he had a bad feeling. They rounded a bend in the passage, and then they saw it. A large chamber, filled with machines, strange, whirring, clicking machines, and people dressed in white lab coats, working at consoles. They were in some kind of underground laboratory. And in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a group of scientists, was a single glass-walled room. Inside the room was Mary. But it wasn't Mary. Not exactly. It was a clone, and beside her, another clone, and another. Rows and rows of Mary clones, all identical, all staring blankly ahead. John stared, his mind shattering. Mary, she wasn't just a surrogate. She was a template, a perfect genetic specimen, and they were mass-producing her. Then, one of the scientists turned and saw them. His eyes widened in surprise. "Intruders!" he shouted. The other scientists looked up, and then they all started running towards them. John grabbed Evelyn's hand and started running. They had to get out of there. But it was too late. The scientists were too fast. They were surrounded. Then a voice, cutting through the chaos. "Stop!" Everyone froze. Standing in the doorway, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, imposing, with a face that John knew all too well. It was him, another John. But this John was different. He was younger, stronger, with a cold, calculating look in his eyes, and he was wearing a Soviet military uniform. "Hello, Kolov," the other John said, his voice smooth and deadly. "Welcome home." "Hello, Kolov," the other John said, his voice smooth and deadly. "Welcome home." My head swam. Another me? In a Soviet uniform? It was too much. Way too much. What is this?" I stammered, barely able to get the words out. The other John, Kolov, just smiled. A cold, cruel smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's your past. John, your true past. A past you've tried so hard to forget." He gestured to the scientists. "Show him." They hesitated for a moment. Then one of them stepped forward, carrying a small metal case. He opened it, revealing a syringe filled with a clear liquid. "What's that?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. "A memory enhancer," the other John said. "It will help Kolov remember who he truly is." He nodded to the scientist. The scientist approached me, syringe in hand. "No! Get away from me!" I yelled, backing away. But it was no use. They were too fast. They grabbed me, holding me down. The scientist plunged the needle into my arm. Pain. A searing, burning pain that shot through my entire body. My vision blurred. I screamed. Then, images, flashing through my mind like a strobe light. Faces, places, things I couldn't comprehend. I saw myself. Younger, stronger, fighting, killing, spying, betraying. I was a killer. A cold-blooded killer. A Soviet agent. Kolov. It was all coming back. The training, the missions, the lies. I was a weapon, a machine. New image, clearer than the others. Me, standing over Mary, a gun in my hand. No, I couldn't have. I loved Mary. But the image wouldn't go away. It was real. I knew it was real. I killed Mary. My world shattered. Everything I believed in, everything I held dear, was a lie. I was a monster. I looked at Evelyn, her face filled with horror. She knew. She knew what I had done. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. She didn't say anything, just stared at me, her eyes filled with betrayal. Then a sound, a loud, piercing alarm. The other John, Kolov, frowned. "What's going on?" One of the scientists rushed to a console, frantically typing. "Sir, we have a problem. There's been a breach. Someone's inside the complex." The other John's eyes narrowed. "Who?" The scientist looked up, his face pale. It's Agent Miller, sir. He's here to rescue Kolov, and he's not alone." "Agent Miller? Rescue me?" Then a crash. The doors to the chamber burst open, and standing there, gun drawn, was me. Another me. But this me was different. He was younger, fiercer, with a look of pure determination in his eyes. And beside him was Mary. But not a clone. The real Mary. My Mary. Alive. And behind her, a whole damn army. FBI agents, soldiers, all armed to the teeth. "It's over, Kolov," Agent Miller yelled, his voice booming through the chamber. "Let him go." The other John, Kolov, just laughed, a cold, chilling laugh. "You're too late, Miller," he said. "Kolov is one of us now. He remembers who he truly is." He turned to me, a sinister gleam in his eyes. "Kill them, Kolov. Kill them all." He handed me a gun. I looked at the gun, then at Agent Miller, at Mary, at Evelyn. My head was spinning. Who was I? What was I supposed to do? Then I made a choice. I raised the gun, not at them, at the other John. "I'm not your puppet anymore," I said, my voice trembling but firm. And then I pulled the trigger. Eu apontei a arma. Não neles, no outro John. Eu não sou mais. "Seu fantoche", eu disse, minha voz tremendo, mas firme. E então eu apertei o gatilho. Ele caiu. Os cientistas gritaram. O caos explodiu. Agente Miller e sua equipe invadiram. Tiros por todos os lados. Agente Miller gritou: "Protejam as crianças." Eles eram levadas em meio ao fogo cruzado. Eu corri até Mary, a verdadeira Mary. "Eu sinto muito", eu disse, as lágrimas queimando meus olhos. "Eu não sabia." Ela colocou um dedo nos meus lábios. "Shh, não importa. Você está aqui agora." Evelyn. Eu olhei para ela. Ela estava me encarando, devastada, traída. Como eu poderia consertar isso? Evelyn, eu... Mas então, um estrondo. O teto tremendo. A base subterrânea ruindo. Precisamos sair daqui! Agora! Agente Miller gritou. Nós corremos. Através do laboratório, passando pelos clones de Mary. Cada rosto idêntico, um lembrete sombrio do que eu quase me tornei. Nós encontramos uma saída, uma escada estreita que levava para cima, para a liberdade. Subimos, a base desmoronando atrás de nós. Finalmente, chegamos à superfície. Ar fresco, céu azul. Estávamos vivos, mas a luta não tinha acabado. Olhei para trás, para o buraco que havia engolido o laboratório. O outro John, Kolov, estava lá. Ele havia sobrevivido, e ele estava nos encarando. Um sorriso frio brincava em seus lábios. Isso ainda não acabou, Kolov, ele gritou. Eu vou te encontrar. Eu não respondi, apenas o encarei de volta. Eu não sabia o que o futuro reservava. Mas eu sabia que estava pronto para lutar por ele. Por Mary, por Evelyn, pelas crianças. Nós nos afastamos, deixando Kolov para trás, em meio aos escombros. Agente Miller acenou com a cabeça. Você tem uma escolha a fazer, John. Você pode voltar para sua vida antiga, esquecer tudo isso, ou você pode se juntar a nós, ajudar a impedir que isso aconteça novamente. Eu olhei para Mary. Ela sorriu, pegando minha mão. Eu sabia o que tinha que fazer. Eu estou dentro, eu disse. Evelyn não disse nada. A guerra tinha terminado, mas outra tinha acabado de começar. A verdadeira questão, eu sabia, não era quem eu era, mas quem eu escolheria ser. De qual lado eu lutaria e para quem. Eu faria o que faria Mary escolheria. E com isso em mente, nós entramos no carro e seguimos para o desconhecido. Mas quem era Evelyn? Esse passado dela ainda vai voltar a assombrá-la? Isso vai ser uma bomba. Ei, você, sim, você aí, precisa saber o que vai acontecer? Você precisa se inscrever agora. Não deixe essa história escapar. Esmague o like agora, para a gente continuar trazendo essas histórias eletrizantes. Inunde os comentários com suas teorias mirabolantes. E olha, não espere nem mais um segundo para compartilhar esse vídeo com 5 amigos. Só os verdadeiros fãs sabem a importância de nos apoiar assim. Vai perder essa chance de fazer parte disso? Duvido.